Alright, this is following on from our second derivative lesson, and it is on increasing and decreasing functions. So for a lot of functions that we deal with in calculus, the function is increasing when the derivative is greater than 0, and it is decreasing when the derivative is less than 0. So if a function is increasing, it will have a positive gradient, as you can see here in this diagram. And then it is decreasing when it has a negative gradient. So here we go, find the intervals where f of x is increasing and decreasing. So if we just look at this picture, from this turning point here at -1, 3, there, it is increasing, it's going up to that point, and then from the minimum of 2, -4 is increasing after that point, because that's when the graph starts increasing and going back up again. So this graph is increasing from -1 to -infinity. And it is also increasing from 2 till infinity. So it's increasing in two parts of this graph. Now we want to look at when this is decreasing. So we want to know when is the graph going down, and it is going down in this middle section here. So this graph is decreasing from the x values of -1 to 2. And that's how we tell on a graph if functions are increasing or decreasing. Now, next example, we're going to do 2, and we want to find where these functions are increasing or decreasing. Now, we're going to approach this as if we don't have a calculator in our exam to be able to graph it for us. So to work this out, the first thing we have to do is find the derivative, and I'll explain why in a second. So for part A, let's find the derivative. So we're going to get 3x squared minus 3. So when a derivative equals 0, that means there is no gradient, so it is flat, which represents a turning point in a function. So we want to find in this function, where are those turning points? Where is the gradient 0? So we want to solve this, which means we'll get 3 equals 3x squared, 1 equals x squared. So at the plus and minus of 1 equals x. So that means there are turning points at 1 and -1. Now we need to work out which ones are maximum, which ones are minimum, so we can work out where things are increasing and decreasing. And to do that, we draw a nice little sine diagram, which looks like this. So we draw a bit like a number line. And we're going to put on here our 2 turning points. So we've got -1 and 1. We need to pick a value that is in each of these 3 sections of this graph. So let's do the middle first. So we're going to pick a value between -1 and 1, and we're going to put that into our gradient function. Okay, so I'm going to pick 0, nice and easy. So if you look here, if I put 0 into the gradient function, we will get 3 times 0 squared minus 3, so I will get -3. Now, it doesn't actually matter what the answer is, it just matters if it's positive or negative. So between -1 and 1, the gradient's negative. So like I said, it doesn't matter what value we get, we just need to know, is it positive or negative? Then we do the same for the other 2 parts. So we pick a number bigger than 1, put it into the gradient function, see if it's positive or negative, and pick a value less than -1 to put into our gradient function. So if I put, say, 2 into our derivative function, we would find that the answer would be positive. And if I put -2 into the gradient function, we find that would also be positive. Okay? If the gradient's positive, it's increasing. And if it is negative, it is decreasing. Which means our function is increasing from -infinity to -1. And from 1 to infinity. And then it is decreasing between -1 and 1 because the gradient's negative. Now let's look at B. We're going to do the exact same thing for part B. So we're going to find our derivative first. So the derivative of x squared minus 1, it will be 2x. We want to find where that equals 0. And we'll find it equals 0 at 0. So 0 is a maximum or a minimum. So now we need to work out which one it is. So we draw a little sine diagram again, but this time we only have to put in 0, and we just want to pick a number above 0 and below 0 and put it into our gradient function. So I'm going to pick -1 and put it into our gradient or derivative function, which will be 2 times -1, which is -2, so that is negative. And we want to look at a value above 0 in our derivative, so let's just pick the value of 1, and then 2 times 1 is just 2, which is positive, which means it's decreasing when it is less than 0 and increasing when it is bigger than 0. So our function is decreasing from -infinity to 0, and it is increasing from 0 to infinity. And that's all there is on increasing and decreasing functions. So from your booklets, you can go to booklet 4 and complete pages 1 to 5.